Listener, witness the rise of an ancient power that once ruled the stars. With these words, we begin the account of a civilization born beneath a hostile sky, forged in hardship, and driven toward decisions that would echo across cosmic history. Long before the ages known to the younger species, there existed a people called the Necrontyr. They arose on a world orbiting a bitter and unstable star, whose radiation was both relentless and lethal. Every breath of air and every hour of daylight carried a slow poison that shortened lives and shaped minds with the certainty of early death. Under such a sun, mortality was not an abstract concept, but an ever-present sentence. The average lifespan of a Necrontyr was brief. Disease and wasting affliction stalked every settlement. Generations passed under the looming awareness that existence would be cut short regardless of strength or intellect. Entire bloodlines dwindled before their achievements could mature. This universal condition produced a culture defined by fatalism, envy of the long-lived, and an obsessive search for meaning beyond the limits imposed by nature. Architecture, ritual, and governance reflected this tension. Monuments were built not as celebrations of life, but as assertions against oblivion. The Necrontyr expanded beyond their homeworld through fragile and austere starfaring technology. Their ships were cumbersome and slow, but they granted access to the wider galaxy. Colonies were established on distant planets as attempts to escape the curse of their sun. Yet the radiation that had shaped their biology followed them in the form of inherited frailty. Even under kinder skies, they remained bound to short and painful lifespans. This failure deepened a collective bitterness. Their society hardened into rigid dynastic hierarchies. Noble lines competed for power, influence, and the promise of scientific salvation. Knowledge was treasured as the only tool that might challenge death. Philosophers, scholars, and engineers sought cosmic truths, while political leaders pursued unity through central authority. Conflict periodically flared among the dynasties, but the shared burden of mortality prevented total fragmentation. The Necrontyr saw themselves as a people singled out by the cruelty of the cosmos, destined to suffer while others flourished. This worldview fostered an attitude of isolation and suspicion toward all external life. When primitive astronomical surveys revealed stars rich with habitable worlds, the Necrontyr reacted not with hope, but with resentment. The thought that other beings might live long, untroubled lives under gentle suns was intolerable. Thus, their drive for exploration was not merely curiosity. It was propelled by a desire to understand why fate had condemned them. As their technology progressed, so did the authority of a supreme ruler known as the Silent King. Through this figure, the dynasties were bound to a single political structure, enabling coordinated expansion and unified purpose. Yet beneath the surface lay unresolved despair. The Necrontyr had mastered the means to cross interstellar distances, but they had not mastered their own mortality. That unsolved problem would guide every future decision and lead them inexorably toward powers beyond their comprehension. The Necrontyr civilization matured under the constant shadow of decay. Every advance in governance, philosophy, or science took place against the backdrop of lives measured in tragically brief spans. Illness, degeneration, and early death were the shared inheritance of every generation. Records describe entire communities arranged around necropolises and monuments built to preserve memory against the erosion of time. Architecture reached upward in stark, angular forms, as if seeking to escape the poisonous light of their star. Cities were somber and austere, shaped by mathematics rather than joy. There was little room for extravagance where survival was an unending struggle. The mortality crisis was not only biological, it reshaped the collective psychology of the Necrontyr. Scholars charted the progress of disease with the same precision used to map the stars. Medical guilds recorded the gradual weakening of families. Historians traced patterns of despair that repeated through centuries. The people understood that their greatest enemy was the cosmos itself. In response, their culture embraced themes of inevitability, transience, and endurance through legacy rather than through life. Art was sparse and severe. Literature emphasized the search for meaning beyond the span of a single existence. Dynastic rule crystallized under these conditions. Noble houses claimed authority through lineage and accumulated knowledge rather than charisma or wealth. Each dynasty governed a territory and its accompanying research institutions. Social mobility was rare. The lower strata of society endured lives of labor and sickness, while elites pursued solutions to mortality through experimentation and exploration. Yet even the highest born were subject to the same fate. Power could not buy additional years. This enforced equality in death created a strange unity, reinforced by ceremony and law. The Necrontyr turned increasingly toward the stars as both refuge and puzzle. They constructed observatories to examine distant systems. Spacecraft were engineered with grim efficiency rather than comfort. Expansion beyond their homeworld was not driven by conquest at first, but by the desperate hope that a cure might exist on some untouched planet. Colonies were founded on harsh desert worlds and frozen moons, as well as temperate spheres. Although some environments proved less immediately harmful than their birthplace, none banished the hereditary frailty that plagued them. Scientific culture became the central pillar of Necrontyr society. Laboratories replaced temples. Mathematicians, astronomers, and physicians occupied the role of spiritual leaders in other civilizations. Their inquiries were supported by a population determined to defy what seemed an unjust cosmic design. Educational institutions trained generations of researchers, even as each generation succumbed prematurely to the same wasting afflictions. Knowledge accumulated faster than lives could endure, creating an ever-expanding library of data that rarely yielded the breakthrough they needed. This relentless pursuit hardened the Necrontyr civilization. Compassion for weakness diminished because weakness was universal. Efficiency and discipline were valued above sentiment. Political disputes among dynasties grew sharper as resources were devoted to increasingly ambitious attempts to re-engineer biology or reshape stellar environments. The Silent King enforced unity when rivalry threatened stability, but unity did not relieve despair, it only channeled it toward grander projects. In time, the Necrontyr came to believe that the universe had singled them out for suffering. This belief was not framed as superstition, but as a rational conclusion drawn from observation. Other species appeared healthier and longer lived. Other worlds basked under stable suns. Their own existence seemed an aberration. That perception shaped foreign policy before true contact with other intelligent life even occurred. The Necrontyr would eventually step into a wider galactic. As Necrontyr exploration expanded across the stars, their astronomers eventually identified signs of advanced civilizations. What began as distant observations became verified reality when their vessels encountered the works of an ancient and powerful species, later known as the Old Ones. These beings possessed technologies and biological mastery far beyond anything the Necrontyr could achieve. They shaped ecosystems, guided the development of younger races, and moved between the stars with ease. More importantly to the Necrontyr, they lived immensely long lives. First contact did not occur through direct dialogue, but through the study of vast constructed networks of habitable worlds arranged with deliberate design. The Necrontyr realized they were seeing the legacy of a civilization that had flourished for uncounted ages. When formal contact finally occurred, it was marked by incomprehension on both sides. The Old Ones viewed the galaxy as a complex ecosystem to be guided and preserved. The Necrontyr saw only confirmation that their suffering was unique in the cosmos. Where others might have sought mentorship or alliance, the Necrontyr saw inequality. The biological stability of the Old Ones stood in stark contrast to the frailty of Necrontyr flesh. To them, this was not mere difference, it appeared as cosmic injustice written across the structure of the universe. Their scientists concluded that the Old Ones had discovered secrets of life extension. The belief spread that they withheld those secrets from the Necrontyr, either through indifference or design. Diplomatic exchanges were strained and brief. The cultural gulf between the two sides was too great. The Old Ones prioritized balance and the slow shaping of younger races. The Necrontyr prioritized the conquest of death. When negotiations failed to yield any relief, resentment hardened into hostility. The Necrontyr dynasties unified under the Silent King and began preparing for conflict, not for territorial expansion, but to force the universe to acknowledge their grievance. The war that followed was deeply asymmetric. The Old Ones commanded psychic abilities, advanced bioengineering, and an interstellar web of influence. The Necrontyr relied on material technology and disciplined organization. Their weapons were powerful, but their bodies remained fragile. Fleets clashed across star systems, colonies burned, entire dynastic lineages were extinguished not only by battle, but by the relentless attrition of disease. For the Necrontyr population, the conflict intensified their internal conviction that existence itself was hostile. Every casualty reinforced the lesson that even in war they were at a disadvantage no amount of strategy could fully overcome. Their enemy did not age as they did. Their enemy endured across centuries, while Necrontyr commanders withered between campaigns. Victory seemed permanently beyond reach. Yet retreat was unacceptable. The Silent King and the ruling dynasties committed their civilization to total war. Resources once devoted to medical research were redirected toward weapons development and deeper space exploration. Scientists searched desperately for allies or cosmic forces that might balance the scales against the Old Ones. In doing so, they extended their reach toward regions of space where entities of unimaginable power lingered by the light of newborn stars.
It was this search, driven by resentment and necessity, that would lead the Necrontyr to the discovery of the Ceton. That discovery would transform their civilization beyond recognition and turn a war of resentment into a struggle that reshaped the galaxy itself.
The pressures of interstellar conflict and internal fragility forced the Necrontyr to refine their systems of governance. Although dynastic structures already existed, the strain of war against the Old Ones elevated these houses into the defining institutions of the civilization. Each dynasty controlled fleets, colonies, and research complexes. Their leaders inherited authority through lineage and legal decree. Over time, this structure matured into a vast feudal network stretching across hundreds of star systems, bound together by tradition, law, and a shared will to survive. At the apex of this system stood the Silent King. This title was not a poetic expression, but a formal office. The ruler communicated primarily through edicts rather than public speech. The symbolic silence emphasized impartiality, restraint, and unity above personal ambition. The Silent King did not belong solely to one dynasty. Instead, his authority superseded all others, standing as the final arbiter in disputes and the architect of long-term strategy. Through this office, the Necrontyr overcame their fractious tendencies and maintained a coherent empire despite hardship. The rise of this centralized authority was driven by necessity. The war with the Old Ones revealed the dangers of divided command. Fleets operating independently were defeated in detail. Colonies fell because reinforcements arrived too late, or because rival dynasties hesitated to commit forces that might weaken their own position. The Silent King enforced coordination. Standardized military doctrines were implemented. Resource allocation was systematized. Communication networks were expanded so that decisions reached distant worlds with minimal delay. Yet unity did not erase bitterness. The Necrontyr viewed the Old Ones as guardians of an unequal galaxy. Every defeat deepened the conviction that the universe had aligned against them. To address this perceived injustice, the Dynasties sustained a culture of relentless research. Laboratories probed the secrets of stellar physics, quantum structure, and exotic forms of energy. Exploration vessels ventured into remote and hazardous regions, seeking anything that might counter the Old Ones' advantages. The Silent King authorized these missions, even when they carried extreme risk. Social life across the Empire reflected this atmosphere. Citizens were trained from childhood to accept discipline and sacrifice. Education emphasized mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Military service was widespread, not out of cultural glorification of war, but because survival demanded constant readiness. Urban centers were ordered and austere. Ceremonies reinforced loyalty to dynasty and empire. Public art was dominated by geometric forms and funerary symbolism, reflecting the constant presence of mortality. The Silent King was both a political and moral figurehead. He represented the collective will of a people determined to challenge fate itself. Although dynastic rivalries persisted, open civil war became rare. Instead, competition shifted toward research achievements and strategic influence. Councils of nobles debated policy beneath towering monuments that honored those who had fallen prematurely to sickness and war. Their discussions were defined not by idealism, but by stark pragmatism.
Despite these efforts, the war against the Old Ones remained strategically unwinnable. The Necrontyr lacked the psychic and biological adaptability of their adversaries. Their ships and weapons were formidable, but their leaders aged and died before long-term strategies could mature. This imbalance threatened to erode the empire over time. The Silent King understood that without a decisive advantage, defeat or stagnation was inevitable. It was within this context that scouts and researchers encountered mysterious stellar phenomena surrounding newborn suns. Observations revealed immense entities feeding on the energy of stars themselves. These beings existed on a scale beyond conventional matter and seemed to transcend normal biological limitations. To the Necrontyr, whose singular goal was the conquest of mortality, such entities represented both promise and danger. The Dynasties brought their findings to the Silent King.
The search for a decisive advantage over the Old Ones led Necrontyr explorers to the threshold of a power beyond all prior comprehension. In the depths of interstellar space, near the blazing hearts of young stars, they detected vast entities composed not of flesh, but of energy and consciousness bound to the fundamental forces of the cosmos. These beings drifted across stellar systems, feeding upon the radiant output of suns with a patience measured in cosmic ages. The Necrontyr named them the Citan, a term that conveyed both reverence and caution. Initial contact was indirect. The Necrontyr studied fluctuations in stellar emissions and traced them to coherent intelligences associated with the anomalies. Advanced instruments revealed signatures of thought and intent, operating at scales that dwarfed even the largest Necrontyr warships. These entities appeared immune to entropy as the Necrontyr understood it. They exhibited no signs of aging. They endured indefinitely, nourished by starlight. For a civilization defined by fragile mortality, the existence of such beings offered both explanation and temptation. Through experimental manipulation of exotic matter, the Necrontyr developed methods to communicate with the Citan. They fashioned bodies of living metal capable of housing fragments of stellar consciousness, allowing the entities to interact with the material universe in more focused and coherent form. Once embodied, the Citan revealed perspectives shaped by eons of observation. They spoke not with voices, but through structured emissions and symbolic transmissions translated by Necrontyr systems. The result was the first true exchange between corporeal civilization and stellar godlike intelligence. The Citan regarded the Necrontyr with curiosity rather than contempt. Unlike the Old Ones, whose interests lay in guiding biological life, the Citan showed little concern for ecology or balance. They were beings of appetite, logic, and immense detachment. They recognized in the Necrontyr a species both technologically capable and psychologically driven by suffering. That suffering could be directed, alliances could be formed. In this convergence of need and opportunity, the foundations were laid for one of the most consequential partnerships in galactic history. To the Necrontyr leadership, the Citan appeared to represent the ultimate answer to their greatest problem. Here were entities that defied aging. Here was proof that existence free from decay was possible. Scholars theorized that by studying or collaborating with the Citan, the Necrontyr might finally transcend the limitations imposed by their biology.
The Silent King and the dynastic councils weighed the risks carefully, yet every calculation returned to the same conclusion. Without radical transformation, the Necrontyr would remain doomed to frailty and eventual eclipse. Diplomatic protocols were established, though they bore little resemblance to conventional treaties. The Citan offered power, knowledge of cosmic energies, and assistance in the war against the Old Ones. In return, they sought material forms, worship, and the opportunity to reshake reality in ways aligned with their inscrutable desires. The Necrontyr constructed colossal temples and energy arrays to serve as conduits through which the Citan could manifest more fully. As the alliance deepened, the Citan began to instruct Necrontyr scientists in the manipulation of exotic matter and the control of fundamental forces. Technologies emerged that appeared indistinguishable from natural law rewritten. Weapons capable of unraveling molecular bonds and warships driven by captured stellar power entered production. The balance of the ongoing war began slowly to shift. At the same time, the presence of the Citan altered Necrontyr culture. Temples replaced laboratories as the central symbols of civic life. Ritualized reverence for the star gods spread throughout the dynasties. The Silent King maintained political control, yet the ideological center of gravity shifted toward the cosmic beings whose existence promised deliverance from mortality. Hope took the place of despair, but it was a hope placed in powers neither fully understood nor fully constrained. This alliance was not yet the catastrophe it would become. At this stage, it was the culmination of millennia of suffering and exploration. The Necrontyr believed they had finally found the means. With the Citan now embodied in forms of living metal, the Necrontyr entered into a formalized alliance that reshaped every aspect of their civilization. These stellar beings were treated not merely as allies, but as divine patrons whose existence confirmed that immortality was attainable. Vast complexes of monolithic architecture were constructed to honor them. Energy was drawn from captured suns to sustain their manifestations. Dynastic courts hosted emissaries tasked with interpreting the will of the star gods through carefully regulated channels. The Citan did not demand worship in the traditional sense. Instead, they cultivated structured devotion that bound the Necrontyr psychologically to the alliance. The promise offered was clear. In exchange for loyalty and participation in the grand designs of the Citan, the Necrontyr would be led toward release from the frailty that had marked their existence since the birth of their species. This bargain resonated deeply throughout the Empire. For the first time, hope was a rational expectation rather than an abstract aspiration. The influence of the Citan was not limited to ideology. They brought with them an understanding of the physical universe that far surpassed even the most advanced Necrontyr. Under their guidance, engineers learned to manipulate inert metals into responsive, self-repairing forms. Energy distribution systems were redesigned around the principles of stellar physics. Entire fleets were refitted or replaced with vessels capable of inflicting catastrophic damage at ranges previously thought impossible. The Necrontyr military became a tool sharpened to a level the Old Ones had not anticipated. Society reorganized to support this transformation. Temples functioned as command centers where religious ceremony and military planning merged into a single institutional framework. Scholars became priests of energy and order. Soldiers became instruments of divine strategy. The Silent King retained authority, but he now governed alongside beings of power so immense that conventional politics seemed almost trivial in comparison. Many dynastic nobles accepted this shift with resignation. Others embraced it as the only viable future.
The C'tan demonstrated little concern for the ethical implications of their guidance. To them, life was a form of energy expression to be directed toward desired outcomes. Their perspective was neither benevolent nor malicious in the way organic minds defined orality. They saw in the Necrontyr a population whose suffering could be transformed into loyalty. In return for obedience, they provided technologies that brought victory within reach. Necrontyr fleets, armed with weapons derived from stellar energy, began to reverse centuries of disadvantage. The old ones, long accustomed to strategic dominance, now faced an opponent empowered by cosmic entities indifferent to biological balance. Worlds once protected by the ancient civilization fell under relentless assault. Energy beams stripped atmospheres. Fortifications dissolved under weapons that unraveled matter itself. The Necrontyr recorded these events with clinical precision. For them, the war was no longer a struggle for survival alone. It had become a process of rewriting the order of the galaxy to reflect their new partnership with the star gods. Despite outward triumph, subtle changes were taking root. As the C'tan grew accustomed to their new physical forms, they discovered a source of sustenance far more intoxicating than sunlight. The energies released by intelligent minds and living bodies under certain conditions provided a concentrated and intoxicating nourishment. This discovery altered their priorities. What had begun as an alliance of mutual interest began quietly to tilt toward exploitation. The Silent King and the dynastic councils did not yet comprehend the full implications. They remained focused on the long-promised solution to mortality. The C'tan assured them that such a transformation was within reach, and that the final step would require a fundamental shift from fragile flesh to a perfected state. The Necrontyr, driven by centuries of suffering, accepted this proposal as the logical culmination of their quest. Thus, the stage was set for Biotransference, the greatest experiment. The culmination of the alliance between the Necrontyr and the C'tan took form in a project known as Biotransference. The C'tan proposed a comprehensive solution to the problem that had shaped Necrontyr existence since their earliest history. Instead of struggling against the frailty of organic bodies, the Necrontyr could abandon them entirely. Their minds would be transferred into bodies of living metal. Disease, decay, and the burdens of biology would be eliminated. In their place would stand a race of immortal beings, tireless and efficient, freed from the constraints that had defined their civilization for millennia. The Silent King and the dynastic councils debated this proposal with the full weight of their responsibility. The promise was impossible to ignore. The Necrontyr had exhausted every other avenue. Their homeworld remained lethal. Their colonies offered no refuge. Medical science had reached its limits. Generations had withered under the light of their murderous star, while others in the galaxy thrived. Biotransference appeared not as a gamble, but as the inevitable next step in the trajectory of a civilization determined to defy cosmic injustice. Vast facilities were constructed across key worlds. Towering machines powered by stellar energy
stood ready to strip consciousness from organic form and bind it to bodies forged from self-repairing necrodermis. The Citan oversaw the process directly. Their understanding of energy and matter made them indispensable. Citizens were told that the procedure would preserve identity while discarding pain and mortality. The promise spread like a final, desperate hope through every stratum of society. The process began with the elites of the dynasties, then extended outward to their subjects. Organic bodies were reduced to dust as neural patterns were recorded and imprinted into metallic shells. The transformation was total. Those who emerged from the forges were immune to age, disease, or exhaustion. Their new forms could withstand extremes of environment that would have annihilated their former bodies. The Necrontyr had indeed conquered mortality. But the price was catastrophic. The transfer of consciousness proved imperfect. Many subjects retained only fractured memories. Emotional range was dulled or erased entirely. What had once been a complex tapestry of culture and aspiration became a hierarchy of metallic entities driven by logic, command protocols, and residual fragments of identity. The Consonitan had not revealed the full truth. They had designed the procedure to ensure that the new forms would be more controllable and more useful to their cosmic appetites. For the Sinitan, the Biotransference was not merely a technological triumph. It also provided them with sustenance. The transformation released vast quantities of psychic and biological energy. Entire populations were converted in a wave of agony that the star gods consumed with rapturous intensity. The Necrontyr, as a living species, ceased to exist. In their place stood the Necrons, a race of immortal machines bound to the will of rulers who were themselves haunted by the knowledge of what had been lost. The Silent King was confronted with the magnitude of the betrayal. His people had achieved immortality, but they had done so at the cost of their souls, their emotions, and the organic heritage that had once defined them. The Consonitan had gained servants and a renewable source of sustenance. The Necrons had gained eternal existence, but not the freedom or transcendence they had imagined. What had been framed as deliverance became the final act in the long tragedy of the Necrontyr. Yet there was no turning back. The old bodies were gone. The ancient culture built upon fragile life had been erased. What remained was a race of silent, tireless beings prepared for total war. Their weapons were more powerful than ever. Their leaders now commanded legions that would never age, never fall ill, and never forget an enemy. The Necrons had been born. The galaxy would soon learn the consequences. With the completion of biotransference across the Empire, the Necrontyr as a biological species vanished from history. In their place arose the Necrons, an immortal race of living metal guided by preserved intellect stripped of flesh. Their civilization did not collapse under this transformation. Instead, it hardened into a machine-like order characterized by unyielding discipline and absolute obedience to hierarchical command structures. The Silent King now ruled over a population that no longer feared disease or death. Yet the cost of this victory lay in the erosion of individuality, memory, and emotional depth. Most Necrons retained only fragments of their former lives. For the vast majority, consciousness narrowed into functional awareness built around task and duty. Warriors marched with flawless precision, guided by embedded protocols. Administrative castes processed information and resource flows without hesitation or doubt. Only the highest-ranking nobles and lords preserved significant portions of their original personalities. Even these leaders experienced an unsettling sense of distance from their past selves. Memories that had once been vivid were now static records rather than living experiences. The C'tan presided over this new order as godlike overlords. They had gained not only servants, but an empire capable of conducting warfare on a scale unmatched by any biological civilization. The Necron military machine expanded rapidly. Legions of tireless soldiers, commanded by immortal strategists, stood ready to pursue the war against the Old Ones with renewed ferocity. Warships built from necrodermis traveled between stars with cold inevitability. Weapons powered by stellar energy became instruments of calculated annihilation. Society itself became an extension of military doctrine. Civilian life, as previously understood, ceased to exist. Every structure, institution, and process served the twin goals of order and conquest. Tomb complexes were constructed across countless worlds to house reserve forces and leadership cadres in stasis. Industrial systems operated without need for rest or morale. The concept of leisure disappeared. So did the desperation and hope that had once defined Necrontyr culture. In their place remained an emotionless efficiency that regarded the universe as a field for strategic action.
Yet beneath this apparent stability lay unresolved contradictions. The Necrons had achieved immortality, but not liberation. They were unaging machines ruled not only by nobles and the Silent King, but also by the C'tan, whose appetites had guided their transformation. The star gods now possessed an empire of obedient instruments capable of harvesting the energies they craved. The original motive that had driven the Necrontyr, the desire to escape suffering, had been replaced by a different form of servitude. The Silent King understood this truth more fully than most. Although bound by the same metallic form, he retained clarity of intellect and a sense of responsibility for what his decisions had wrought. He commanded a civilization that had conquered the biological constraints of life, yet was increasingly shaped by the will of beings older and more alien than any organic ruler. The nobles beneath him continued to exercise authority, but their autonomy was constrained by loyalty protocols embedded within their new forms. Rebellion was not impossible, but it was improbable. Externally, the Necrons now possessed every advantage. They were immune to exhaustion. They did not fear death. They did not fragment through aging or generational change. Strategic plans could unfold across millennia. This stability transformed their military doctrine. Campaigns were conducted with mathematical precision. Losses were repaired without grief. Worlds were conquered or sterilized with the same calm deliberation applied to scientific research in earlier eras. The galaxy began to shift in response. The war in heaven entered a new and more destructive phase. The Old Ones now faced not merely a wounded and resentful biological species, but a mechanized empire guided by stellar gods and commanded by undying rulers. The balance that had once favored the ancient civilization eroded rapidly. The birth of the Necrons marked the point at which the tragedy of the Necrontyr now reshaped the fate of countless species.
and although the Necrons themselves no longer experience the full depth of emotion, the consequences of their transformation would soon extend far beyond the limits of their metallic consciousness.
The transformation of the Necrontyr into the Necrons marked the beginning of the most destructive conflict the galaxy had ever witnessed. What had previously been a struggle between a resentful but fragile civilization and an ancient, biologically advanced power now became a war between immortal machine legions guided by stellar gods and the old ones who had long shaped the destinies of younger species. Historians of later ages would refer to this vast and devastating conflict as the War in Heaven, a term reflecting both its scale and its consequences for the structure of reality itself. The Necrons entered this war with newfound confidence, their soldiers no longer weakened with age or disease. Their commanders planned across millennia rather than decades. Their fleets traversed the stars with relentless purpose. Weapons derived from Cetan knowledge unleashed energies that tore apart continents and unraveled molecular bonds. Where Necron armies advanced, resistance collapsed under the sheer inevitability of mechanized annihilation. The disciplines of strategy, logistics, and engineering that had once served a desperate biological civilization were now applied with inhuman precision. The Old Ones had long relied on their mastery of genetics, psychic ability, and ecological engineering. They responded to the Necron threat by accelerating the development of younger races. These emergent species were designed to harness the warp, the immaterial dimension that reflected and amplified consciousness. Through this strategy, the Old Ones sought to counter the physical and technological superiority of the Necrons with armies wielding psychic power. For a time, this approach slowed the advance of the Necron legions and restored some measure of balance. However, the introduction of widespread psychic activity had profound and unintended consequences. The warp began to surge with turbulent energies generated by fear, hatred, and conflict. New entities formed within its depths, shaped by the emotions of mortal beings, yet untouched by material law. While the Old Ones attempted to guide events toward stability, the scale of devastation unleashed across the galaxy made such guidance increasingly difficult. The War in Heaven expanded beyond the control of its original belligerents. The Cetan regarded this unfolding chaos with detached interest. Their focus remained on harvesting the energies of both stars and sentient life. Under their direction, the Necrons intensified their campaigns. Entire systems were sterilized to deny the Old Ones reinforcement. Fortresses were dismantled molecule by molecule. Resistant populations were culled with cold efficiency. The Necron command structure, unified and undying, refined each operation through cumulative experience. There were no generational breaks, no loss. Yet even in apparent triumph, the Necrons paid a hidden price. The majority of their population functioned as weapons and administrators rather than as a society. Culture narrowed to ritualized obedience. Memory faded. Only the upper nobility and the silent king retained the ability to reflect upon the cost of their transformation. They had gained immortality, but had sacrificed the depth of being that had once made their struggle meaningful. This realization grew slowly, like a quiet echo beneath the thunder of war. As the conflict escalated, the Old Ones began to falter. Their networks of controlled ecosystems collapsed under repeated assault. Their client races fought bravely, but could not match the sheer endurance of the Necrons. strategic positions fell. The warp itself became increasingly unstable, complicating the Old Ones' reliance on psychic power. The Necrons pressed their advantage with unwavering logic, guided by Satan, whose perception of time dwarfed even their own. The war in heaven reshaped the galaxy in permanent ways. Star systems were ruined, species were extinguished. The balance between material space and the warp shifted under the pressure of unleashed emotion and suffering. The Necrons appeared on the verge of final victory, yet beneath the surface of their empire, the seeds of future upheaval were already forming. The very beings who had granted them immortality and guided their campaigns were also the architects of their greatest bondage. The stage was set for the next turning point. The defeat of the Old Ones would not mark the end of conflict. Instead, it would expose the internal contradictions within the Necron Empire and the fragile loyalties upon which the alliance with the Citan was built. As the war in heaven reached its later phases, the advantage shifted decisively toward the Necrons and their Citan masters. The Old Ones, once unrivaled custodians of galactic order, found their networks of influence collapsing under sustained assault. Their mastery of bioengineering and the warp had delayed defeat, but it could not compensate for the cold, tireless perseverance of immortal machine armies. Necron fleets advanced along meticulously calculated trajectories, reducing once vibrant star systems to silent ruins. The Citan regarded these campaigns as both strategic necessity and an opportunity to harvest the energies released by death on a scale previously unimaginable. The Old Ones attempted to adapt. They seeded the galaxy with new species equipped with psychic potential to resist Necron weaponry and to function as autonomous defenders of the warp. This strategy produced numerous emerging civilizations, some of which would one day become major powers in their own right. Yet even as these young races took shape, the Old Ones were forced into defensive withdrawals. Gate networks failed, sanctuary worlds fell. The psychic burden of a galaxy at war destabilized the warp itself, turning it from a navigable energy field into a turbulent domain of predatory entities. From the Necron perspective, the war was no longer a contest of equals. It had become a systematic dismantling of an ancient order. Planetary biospheres were stripped away, artificial constructs were shattered, strategic hubs that had stood for unimaginable spans of time were reduced to inert debris. Cold records etched into Necron archives described these victories in neutral terms, devoid of triumph or cruelty. Efficiency was the only measure that mattered. The Citan, however, experienced a different form of satisfaction. Each death, each unleashed surge of fear and despair produced energy that they consumed with increasing appetite. They reshaped battle plans to maximize suffering rather than merely achieve strategic results. Entire populations were manipulated into despair before being annihilated. For the Necron nobility, this shift revealed the degree to which their supposed allies treated sentient existence as nothing more than a resource. Although many Necrons lacked the emotional depth to object, their leaders retained enough awareness to recognize that their civilization was no longer sovereign.
Nevertheless, the assault continued. Eventually, the Old Ones were driven to the brink of extinction. Their remaining strongholds became isolated pockets resisting the inevitable. Some fled into hidden dimensions or sealed themselves within artificial sanctuaries where they hoped to ride out the galactic storm. Others vanished entirely, leaving behind relic worlds and fragments of technology that would puzzle later civilizations. The galaxy they had once curated as a living tapestry of species, ecosystems, and cultures now bore the scars of uncountable conflicts. In the vacuum of authority left by the defeat of the Old Ones, the Ceton began to reshape the broader cosmic order according to their divergent wills. Some sought to dominate the entire galaxy as personal domains. Others pursued grand experiments in energy manipulation or matter transformation. The Necron dynasties, supposedly the beneficiaries of this new age, found themselves relegated to the role of instruments carrying out the designs of powers that did not share their values or interests. The long struggle to escape mortality had resulted in a new form of subservience. The Silent King observed this transformation with growing clarity. He understood that the Ceton had never been true allies. They were entities of vast intellect but limited empathy, motivated by appetite and abstract ambition. The Necrons had helped them achieve supremacy, but in doing so had surrendered their own agency. The galaxy lay open to exploitation, and the star gods intended to shape it without regard for the survival or dignity of any mortal species, including the Necrons themselves. Thus, even at the height of apparent victory, a new crisis emerged. The defeat of the Old Ones did not bring peace. Instead, it exposed the fundamental contradiction at the heart of Necron existence. They had become immortal rulers of a galaxy broken by war, yet they did not truly rule. Their former liberators stood above them, feeding on the energies of destruction and viewing all forms of life as expendable. The stage was set for the next upheaval, a reckoning between the Necrons and the very gods they had raised into material form, a confrontation that would determine the long-term fate of both empire and galaxy.
In the aftermath of the Old One's defeat, the galaxy entered a period defined not by recovery, but by the unchallenged dominance of the Cetan. These stellar beings, embodied in forms of living metal and supported by Necron legions, exercised power on a scale no biological empire had ever matched. Yet their rule was neither coherent nor benevolent. Each Cetan pursued its own designs, shaped by appetite, curiosity, or cold abstraction. Civilizations were manipulated, consumed, or destroyed according to whims that bore no resemblance to moral or political logic. The Necrons, once a sovereign people, now existed primarily as instruments of this cosmic order. For the Silent King and the dynastic nobility, the reality of this subservience became impossible to ignore. The Necrons had gained immortality, but it was a hollow immortality, governed by entities that valued them only as tools. The Cetan had guided biotransference not to uplift a suffering species, but to create an obedient, durable infrastructure for their own uses. The machinery of empire was organized around harvesting energy. Populations across the galaxy served as resources to be spent. The Necrons carried out these tasks with unerring precision, yet the strategic purpose no longer aligned with their own interests. A second realization struck even deeper. The Cetan had no intention of granting the Necrons autonomy in the future. Their plans extended indefinitely, envisioning a galaxy ordered entirely to optimize the flow of energy into their immortal consciousness.
The Necrons were not partners in this vision, they were components. The Silent King, still capable of reflection, recognized that his earlier decision had condemned his people to an eternity without agency. Victory over mortality had cost them their freedom. This awareness formed the foundation for rebellion. The conspiracy began within the highest strata of Necron leadership. Lords and nobles whose minds had survived biotransference with minimal degradation retained enough independence to grasp the scale of Citan domination. They communicated through encrypted command channels and covert data sanctuaries. Plans were drafted not merely to resist, but to shatter the power of the star gods entirely. Such a goal seemed impossible at first, given the cosmic nature of the Citan. Yet the Necrons possessed one decisive advantage. They had forged the bodies that anchored the Citan to the material universe. Those bodies, however mighty, were still mechanisms. Mechanisms could be broken.
Secret research began across multiple dynasties. Scientists and engineers who had once served the Citan now turned their knowledge toward designing weapons capable of fragmenting stellar consciousness. Locking fields, dimensional traps, and energy lattices were devised in absolute secrecy. Factories constructed these devices under the guise of routine military expansion. The preparations required centuries, but time no longer constrained the Necrons. They could plan without haste. When the rebellion was finally launched, it unfolded with the precision of a perfectly executed military operation. Necron fleets turned their weapons not upon external enemies, but upon their own supposed gods. Citan were lured into ambushes disguised as ritual energy gatherings or strategic councils. Once isolated, they were assaulted with technology specifically engineered to disrupt and fracture their embodied forms. The process was unimaginably violent on a cosmic scale. Entities that had consumed stars and shaped empires were shattered into innumerable fragments, each still potent but no longer cohesive. Many Citan were destroyed outright. Others fractured into shards that were captured and imprisoned in containment devices guarded by entire dynasties. The Necrons did not merely seek revenge, they sought to ensure that the star gods could never again command the destiny of the galaxy. Fragmentation transformed beings of cosmic authority into dangerous but controllable artifacts. What had once ruled now existed as unwilling sources of power. The rebellion succeeded, but at extraordinary cost. Entire campaigns had to be fought against Necron forces still loyal to specific Citan, and against the star gods themselves as they retaliated with energies capable of annihilating planets. Tomb worlds were lost, fleets were destroyed. The fabric of reality bore new scars. Yet by the end of this struggle, the Citan were broken as a unified force. The Necrons had at last reclaimed their independence, yet this victory revealed the full emptiness of their condition. They stood as immortal machines in a galaxy wrecked by war, haunted by the memory of choices that could not be undone. Their gods were gone, but so were their former lives. The question of what future remained for such a civilization now loomed over every dynasty, and above them all, the Silent King, who had led them through both betrayal and rebellion. With the rebellion complete and the Citan shattered, the galaxy entered a strange and silent phase. Entities that had once bent the laws of physics to their will now existed only as fractured consciousness bound within shards of necrodermis. Each shard retained fragments of its former identity, along with a portion of the impossible power that had once defined the star gods. None, however, possessed the full cosmic awareness that had allowed the C'tan to manipulate entire civilizations. What remained were dangerous relics, each piece capable of great destruction but stripped of overarching purpose. The Necrons devoted vast resources to hunting down these remnants. The process was relentless. Specialized fleets ranged across the scarred galaxy, tracking energy signatures that hinted at the presence of C'tan fragments. When located, these shards were bound within intricate containment matrices designed to restrict motion and suppress conscious coherence. Some shards were imprisoned beneath the surfaces of tomb worlds as strategic reserves. Others were weaponized, mounted within engines of war that converted the last vestiges of stellar godhood into focused destructive force. Each case reflected the same cold calculus. The C'tan would never again rise to dominance. Yet the destruction of the star gods did not restore what the Necrons had lost. Their civilization remained a rigid hierarchy of immortal machines. The vast majority possessed only limited self-awareness, their minds narrowed to task and obedience. The nobility retained intellect and strategic vision, but even they felt the distance from their former lives like a faint echo. Without the C'tan, the Necrons were independent, but their independence existed within the constraints of bodies that could no longer fully experience or change. They had traded one form of subservience for a freedom bound by the limits of metal and program. The Silent King struggled most with this realization. He had led his people through alliance, transformation, war, and rebellion. Now, in the aftermath, he confronted the consequences of those choices in their starkest form. The Necrontyr were gone forever. Their culture of tragic brilliance, their fragile hopes, and their biological existence had vanished into history. What remained was a race of eternal custodians presiding over a galaxy devastated by conflict, haunted by the knowledge that their actions had unleashed forces that even the old ones had feared.
Externally, the collapse of the C'tan reshaped galactic power structures. Without unified guidance, the Necrons no longer acted as a single coordinated force. Dynasties returned to their ancestral territories, each maintaining armies, tomb complexes, and fleets, but lacking an overarching imperial mission. The younger races, seeded by the old ones, struggled to survive in the fractured environments left behind. Warp entities born from millennia of psychic turmoil grew increasingly active. The foundations of future ages were being laid, yet the Necrons watched with a detachment born of machine logic and ancient regret. Internally, debate grew within the ruling castes. Some argued that the Necrons should withdraw from the galactic stage entirely, preserving their realms in silence and isolation. Others favored continued dominance, reasoning that only Necron order could prevent the galaxy from descending into chaos. Still others fixated on research into mind and memory, seeking in vain to restore the emotional depth lost during biotransference. These debates unfolded over centuries without resolution, since time no longer forced decisions. The shattering of the C'tan had removed the most immediate threat to Necron autonomy, but it also removed a central unifying purpose. No great enemy remained, no grand project promised deliverance. The Necrons were left alone with immortality and with the memory, however faded, of what they had once been. The Silent King recognized that without a decisive new direction, his people risked stagnation on a cosmic scale. What had begun as a quest to escape mortality had ended in a state where change itself seemed almost impossible. Thus, in the quiet aftermath of cosmic rebellion, the Necrons confronted the deepest question of their existence. They had defeated their gods. They had survived the greatest war the galaxy had ever known, yet they no longer knew why they endured. The answer to that question would shape the next great turning point in their history and lead to a decision that would suspend their civilization between past and future for millions of years to come.
In the aftermath of the Citan's destruction, the Necrons found themselves in possession of a hollow victory. Their gods were broken. Their ancient enemies, the Old Ones, were scattered or extinct. The galaxy itself lay wounded, its political, ecological, and psychic structures destabilized by millennia of total war. Yet the Necrons did not stand as triumphant rulers of this altered cosmos. Instead, they existed as a fragmented collection of dynasties, bound together by memory, hierarchy, and the relentless logic of immortal machine minds. The great question that confronted them was simple in form, yet vast in implication. What purpose did endless existence serve when every original goal had either been achieved or rendered meaningless? The Silent King bore the greatest weight of this realization. He had seen his people transformed from mortal scholars and rulers into tireless legions. He had watched them march at the command of star gods whose appetite. Therefore, the Silent King made a decision unprecedented in scope. He decreed that the Necrons would withdraw from galactic affairs entirely. Their armies, fleets, and ruling structures would enter a state of suspended animation. Tomb complexes across the galaxy would become vaults of stasis, preserving the Empire until such time as conditions changed enough to allow renewal. This policy later became known as the Great Sleep. It represented both strategic calculation and an implicit admission that the Necrons, despite all their power, had reached a limit beyond which they could not move without risking disintegration. The implementation of this plan required meticulous preparation. Worlds were converted into tomb planets, their surfaces reshaped to conceal vast subterranean structures. Stasis crypts were calibrated to endure for millions of years. Autonomous systems were installed to monitor environmental conditions and defend against intrusion. Command protocols ensured that dynasties would retain identity and hierarchy upon awakening. Even the preservation of captured Citan shards was incorporated into this network, ensuring that the remnants of the star gods would neither escape nor fall into the hands of younger species. Not all Necrons agreed with the Silent King's decree, but resistance proved rare. Most lacked the emotional depth to challenge authority. Others accepted the logic of withdrawal. A small number rejected stasis and departed into the void as autonomous warbands or isolated rulers. Their later histories would become part of the complex tapestry of future ages. Yet the overwhelming majority of the Necron civilization entered the crypts, surrendering conscious experience in exchange for preservation. At the final moment, the Silent King took one further step. He severed the command protocols that bound all dynasties to his direct authority.
The decision reflected his belief that his leadership had shaped the tragedy of their past as much as it had preserved their survival. Then he departed the galaxy.
When the decree of the Great Sleep was enacted, the Necron dynasties began the monumental task of withdrawing from active existence. Across the galaxy, entire planetary systems were transformed into layered sepulchres. Worlds that had once served as administrative capitals, industrial hubs, or military staging grounds became tomb planets whose surfaces concealed vast subterranean complexes. These structures were not mere shelters. They were engineered environments designed to preserve entire civilizations in perfect stasis for spans of time beyond ordinary measurement. Each tomb world followed a similar architectural logic. At the outermost layer stood defensive installations equipped with automated weaponry and guardian constructs capable of functioning without conscious oversight. Beneath these lay chambers dedicated to maintenance systems, power cores, and stasis regulators. Deeper still resided the slumbering legions. Row upon row of Necron warriors were placed within crypts where their metallic forms would rest motionless, timeless, and inert. Nobles, lords, and ruling councils occupied secure vaults surrounded by layered fail-safes to ensure continuity of command upon awakening. The engineering achievements involved in this project were immense. Stasis fields were calibrated to halt every measurable process within the preserved forms. Power was drawn from planetary cores, captured stellar radiation, or exotic energy reservoirs refined during the era of C-10 dominance. Redundancy was built into every system to guard against geological instability, cosmic catastrophe, or external interference. Where necessary, entire continents were reshaped to conceal access points. To later observers, many tomb worlds would appear barren, ruined, or unremarkable, hiding their true function beneath lifeless landscapes. The cultural implications of this withdrawal were profound. The Necrons had already sacrificed biological existence in their pursuit of immortality. Now they willingly surrendered consciousness itself for an indefinite period. What remained of their societal life paused at a single moment in time. Diplomatic relations between dynasties were frozen. Political disagreements ceased, not through resolution, but through suspension. The Necron Empire did not collapse, it simply stopped moving. A small number of dynasties resisted total stasis. Some leaders believed that continued vigilance was necessary to prevent the rise of new cosmic threats. Others retained enough vestiges of ambition or pride to reject the notion of self-imposed dormancy. These outliers either fortified isolated territories or embarked on long-range voyages into uncharted space. Yet even these exceptions operated on a vastly reduced scale compared to the great dynastic civilizations of earlier ages. The core of Necron power slept beneath the ground. As the last crypts sealed, automated guardians activated, and defensive protocols took control. These included constructs designed to eliminate trespassers, distort sensor readings, or cloak planetary signatures. Many tomb worlds were deliberately placed in regions of minimal strategic value to avoid attention. Others lay hidden within asteroid fields, nebulae, or dead systems where no surviving ecosystem remained. The galaxy, still reeling from the war in heaven, gradually moved on without knowledge of the silent legions beneath its surface.
During this era of cosmic dormancy, the younger races continued to evolve. Civilizations rose, fell, and rebuilt upon foundations shaped by the remnants of ancient conflict. Some unwittingly settled on tomb worlds, constructing cities above the sleeping armies of a forgotten empire. Archaeological exploration occasionally brushed against the outermost layers of Necron architecture, recording inexplicable anomalies before retreating in confusion. Yet the full reality of what lay below remained concealed by design. Within the crypts, time itself became irrelevant. The Necrons did not age, they did not dream, they did not think. They existed in a state of perfect suspension, preserved for a future that had not yet taken form. Only the silent guardians and automated systems remained active, performing maintenance cycles and monitoring external conditions. Millennia passed, then millions of years. Stars were born and died. Galactic arms drifted. The tomb worlds endured.
For millions of years, the galaxy drifted through cycles of birth and destruction, while the Necrons slept beneath its surface. Their tomb worlds remained unchanged in outward appearance, silent and inert, while civilizations rose and fell above them. Stars aged, empires formed, and the descendants of the younger races gradually forgot the distant events of the war in heaven. What had once been a galactic crucible of conflict faded into legend and myth. Only the tomb complexes, buried beneath layers of stone, dust, and time, preserved the memory of an age when the Necrons and the Citan had reshaped reality itself. Within the sealed crypts, stasis systems maintained their charge with unwavering precision. The Necrons did not think or perceive the passing of epochs. To them, the Great Sleep was instantaneous, a suspension of awareness measured not in subjective experience, but in the unchanging stillness of metal minds at rest. Yet even the most carefully engineered systems were not immune to entropy. Across countless tomb worlds, subtle instabilities accumulated. Power conduits degraded. Stasis fields fluctuated at levels so small they escaped diagnostic correction. Guardians malfunctioned or adapted in unexpected ways. These were not catastrophic failures, but gradual layers of distortion that slowly altered the condition of the sleeping legions. Environmental shifts compounded these internal stresses. Planets cooled or warmed. Geological activity reshaped crusts and buried access points beneath mountains or oceans. Asteroid strikes damaged outer defenses. Radiation storms scarred exposed installations. Some tomb worlds were swallowed by tectonic collapse. Others drifted from their original orbits under gravitational influence. Each change introduced variables that the original architects had anticipated only in theory. The result was a slow divergence between the ideal of perfect preservation and the imperfect reality of an evolving galaxy. The dynastic structure of Necron civilization endured in stasis, preserved in command hierarchies encoded into dormant systems. Yet the uniformity of experience was not maintained. Different worlds encountered different conditions. Some remained pristine, their inhabitants preserved exactly as they had been at the onset of the Great Sleep. Others experienced partial degradation. Memory cores became corrupted. Personality matrices frayed at the edges. In a few cases, entire strata of lower-order Necrons lost the last remnants of individuality, becoming near-autonomous constructs defined solely by basic protocols. The wider galaxy was unaware of these developments. To the emerging civilizations of later ages, the remnants of Necron presence appeared as enigmatic ruins or unexplained technological anomalies. Archaeologists occasionally unearthed fragments of necrodermis, unable to comprehend its self-repairing qualities. Explorers reported ghostly lights in abandoned planets, unaware that they had brushed the edges of still active defense systems. Legends formed around cursed worlds, silent cities, and metallic guardians glimpsed briefly before vanishing into the dust. Throughout this long silence, a deeper transformation also occurred. The warp, once a turbulent but navigable dimension, grew increasingly unstable as the psychic activity of younger races intensified. New powers formed within it, some of which would one day dominate entire eras of galactic history. None of this touched the Necrons directly, yet it reshaped the environment into which they would eventually awaken. The galaxy of the future would bear little resemblance to the one they had left behind. Meanwhile, the Silent King remained absent. His self-imposed exile left the Dynasties without a unifying authority. This absence did not cause collapse during the sleep, but it guaranteed that any future awakening would unfold without centralized coordination. The consequences of this fragmentation would only become apparent much later, when isolated tomb worlds began to stir and encountered a galaxy that had grown complex, divided, and dangerous in entirely new ways. Thus, the Great Sleep achieved its immediate objective. The Necrons preserved themselves through an era of cosmic transformation. Yet preservation was not perfection. Time, though irrelevant to their awareness, remained a force acting upon the physical structures that sustained them. When the first tomb worlds finally began to awaken, the Necrons that emerged were shaped not only by ancient history, but also by the slow, cumulative distortions of an age spent in silence.
The end of the Great Sleep did not arrive as a single event. Instead, it unfolded gradually across the galaxy as dormant systems detected environmental thresholds, external disturbances, or internal degradation sufficient to trigger reactivation protocols. On some tomb worlds, the process began with a flicker of energy deep beneath the crust, followed by the slow reawakening of maintenance engines and command cores. On others, it was initiated by seismic events, orbital instability, or intrusion by unwitting explorers. Whatever the cause, the result was the same. Long, silent crypts stirred, and the Necrons began to awaken. Reactivation was a complex sequence of carefully orchestrated procedures. Power grids spun up from deep planetary reserves. Stasis fields disengaged layer by layer. Diagnostic subroutines scanned each dormant Necron for structural integrity and cognitive stability before returning consciousness to its metallic shell. To those who awoke, the passage of millions of years was imperceptible. One moment they had closed their eyes to an unstable galaxy. The next, they rose to find a cosmos transformed beyond recognition. The initial awakenings revealed the uneven impact of time. On some tomb worlds, the dynastic hierarchy returned flawlessly. Lords emerged with intact memory cores, fully aware of their ancient status and responsibilities. Warriors and administrators resumed their roles with mechanical efficiency.
These dynasties re-entered galactic affairs as coherent political entities, commanding fleets and armies that still reflected the disciplined order of the distant past. Elsewhere, the picture was less orderly. Systems degraded by erosion, tectonic upheaval, or cosmic radiation triggered irregular or partial reactivations. Lower-order units awoke before their commanders. Data corruption left chain-of-command protocols incomplete. Some tomb complexes found themselves controlled by malfunctioning overlords whose personalities had fragmented into obsessive loops. Others suffered cascading failures that reduced once sophisticated legions into near-autonomous machines driven by base operational imperatives. These differences ensured that the Necron re-emergence would be diverse, complex, and at times internally conflicted.
The galaxy into which the Necrons awoke bore little resemblance to the battleground of the War in Heaven. Younger races now dominated space. Human empires expanded aggressively. Eldar civilizations had reached both splendor and decline. The warp teemed with entities shaped by millennia of psychic turbulence. Star systems that had once been strategic holdings of the Old Ones now hosted thriving or decaying societies, utterly ignorant of the ancient conflicts that had shaped their genesis. To these newer species, the first signs of Necron activity appeared as inexplicable catastrophes. Entire outposts vanished. Planetary defenses failed against weapons of unknown origin. Silent ships of dark metal crossed the void with implacable precision. For the Necrons themselves, the awakening brought challenges that were as much internal as external. Some dynasties attempted to reassert their former territorial claims, only to discover their former domains occupied by unfamiliar civilizations. Others focused first on repairing the damage sustained during dormancy. Many sought information, dispatching reconnaissance fleets to map a galaxy that had evolved without them. The lack of a central coordinating authority ensured that each response reflected local conditions and the temperament of surviving rulers. Political relations among the dynasties resumed in this altered context. Alliances, rivalries, and ancient disputes resurfaced as if the Great Sleep had lasted merely a single campaign cycle. Yet beneath these familiar patterns lay deeper uncertainty. The Silent King was gone. The C'tan existed only as shards. The Old Ones were myths, even to those who had once fought them. The Necrons had returned to consciousness, but not to the world they had expected. Their empire was no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. It was now one power among many, albeit one of extraordinary technological sophistication and ancient lineage. At the same time, the internal consequences of biotransference remained unresolved. The gap between the highly self-aware nobility and the largely automatized lower castes persisted, now complicated by millennia of system degradation. Some rulers pursued efforts to restore lost memory or emotional capacity, seeking to reawaken traces of Necrontyr heritage. Others embraced the cold logic of machine existence as the only viable path forward. Still others saw in the new galactic order an opportunity to rebuild empire through conquest, diplomacy, or calculated withdrawal. Thus, the awakening of the Necrons did not mark a simple return to power. It represented a beginning of a new era in which an ancient, wounded civilization re-entered a galaxy that had moved on without it. The long silence preserved their strength, but had not resolved As the process of reactivation spread across the galaxy, the Necron dynasties began to reassert themselves as political and military powers. Each dynasty emerged from the Great Sleep with its own degree of coherence, technological integrity, and historical memory. These differences produced a mosaic of strategies as the Necrons confronted a galaxy that no longer recognized their claims. Where once they had ruled vast regions with uncontested authority, they now found their ancestral domains populated by younger civilizations that had risen in ignorance of Necron history. The dynasties responded with calculated determination, each guided by its surviving rulers and the logic encoded into their command protocols. For some dynasties, the first priority was restoration rather than conquest. Their tomb worlds bore the scars of time, requiring extensive repair before large-scale operations could resume. Industrial networks were reactivated, resource extraction systems were rebuilt, warrior legions were reorganized according to ancient doctrines. These dynasties advanced slowly, consolidating control over nearby systems to ensure stability before expanding further. Their leaders viewed the galaxy as a strategic puzzle to be solved, with patience acquired through immortality. Others awoke with greater urgency. Corruption in memory cores or the lingering echoes of pre-sleep rivalries drove them to immediate action. Fleets emerged from hidden dockyards to reclaim long-lost territory. Planetary governments were confronted with an implacable force that offered neither negotiation nor warning. In some cases, populations were displaced or obliterated with the same cold precision that had defined Necron warfare in earlier ages. These campaigns were not fueled by hatred, they were expressions of dynastic continuity. From the Necron perspective, they were simply restoring the lawful order of the past. The absence of the Silent King ensured that these efforts lacked a single unified direction. Diplomatic contact between dynasties resumed, but trust was limited. Alliances formed around shared interests or proximity rather than ideological alignment. Some dynasties recognized the value of coordinated strategy in a galaxy filled with powerful competitors. Others preferred isolation, fortifying their tomb worlds and maintaining only minimal external engagement. The legacy of biotransference hung over all such interactions. Without full emotional capacity, cooperation was often pragmatic rather than aspirational. The younger races encountered these re-emerging powers with confusion and alarm. Human worlds reported encounters with silent metallic warriors immune to conventional weaponry. Eldar remnants recognized echoes of a distant and tragic past. Other species responded with resistance, diplomacy, or retreat, depending on capability and temperament. To many of these civilizations, the Necrons appeared not as returning rulers, but as an ancient threat suddenly awakened from myth. Conflicts flared across multiple regions as Necron dynasties tested local defenses and evaluated the strategic landscape. Within Necron society itself, the return to activity reignited questions about identity and purpose. Some overlords viewed the reclamation of lost territory as the first step toward restoring their empire to its former glory. Others interpreted their survival as justification for a more measured approach, seeking coexistence where possible, so long as Necron sovereignty remained intact in key regions. A few rulers became increasingly introspective, studying their own fragmented memories in search of remnants of Necrontyr culture. These efforts rarely produced full restoration, but they did influence decision-making in subtle ways. Technologically,
the Necrons retained superiority in many fields. Their mastery of inertialess drives, matter phase manipulation, and self-repairing materials allowed them to operate with confidence even in hostile environments. Yet supremacy was no longer guaranteed. The galaxy now contained rivals of significant power. Large human empires wielded formidable industrial capacity and unpredictable strategic behavior. The Eldar possessed deep knowledge of the warp and a tragic awareness of ancient history. Other species, newly risen, displayed resilience and adaptability that the Necrons found difficult to predict. As dynasties expanded and rebuilt, internal disparities became increasingly visible. Some emerged as major regional powers, commanding multiple tomb worlds and extensive fleets. Others remained isolated remnants, their resources too degraded to support large-scale operations. This uneven distribution of strength ensured that Necron civilization would never again achieve the uniformity of the pre-sleep era. Instead, it entered a new phase defined by cautious competition, limited cooperation, and the gradual re-establishment of influence within a crowded galactic arena. Yet beneath all strategic calculations lay the same unresolved contradiction. The Necrons had reclaimed their place among the stars, but they had not reclaimed their lost selves. Immortality endured, but so did the distance from their biological origins that had once given their civilization meaning. As the dynasties re-emerged and extended their reach, they carried with them both.
As the Necron dynasties expanded their influence across the modern galaxy, they inevitably came into contact with the dominant powers of the new era. Foremost among these was the Imperium of Man, a vast and fragmented human civilization spread across countless star systems. Human explorers, settlers, and military forces frequently established colonies in regions that had once formed the territorial heartlands of Necron dynasties. From the Necron perspective, these developments represented unauthorized occupation of ancestral domains. From the Imperial viewpoint, Necron tomb worlds appeared as unknown or hostile anomalies emerging without warning from beneath the surface of long-settled planets. The first encounters were marked by misunderstanding and silence. Necron forces rarely communicated with their adversaries. Engagements unfolded with the same clinical efficiency that had characterized Necron warfare in earlier ages. Human military commanders recorded battles against metallic warriors who reassembled after destruction, weapons that reduced armored units to dust, and spacecraft that appeared and vanished without leaving conventional engine traces. The Imperium responded with its usual combination of faith, industrial power, and military doctrine. Yet even its most elite forces found Necron technology difficult to counter. Other races faced similar challenges. The Eldar, heirs to a civilization shaped in part by the aftermath of the War in Heaven, recognized the Necrons as a remnant of an ancient and tragic past. Their leaders issued warnings that few outside their species fully understood. Skirmishes erupted around relic worlds and strategic sites where Necron and Eldar interests overlapped. The Tau Empire, a younger and more optimistic civilization, attempted diplomatic contact but found the Necrons largely indifferent to negotiation, except in cases where calculated agreements served dynastic objectives. Even the predatory Tyranids, driven by biological hunger rather than politics, clashed with Necron forces in battles that pitted living swarms against immortal machines. These conflicts did not follow a single unified pattern.
Each Necron dynasty pursued its own strategic agenda, shaped by available resources, leadership temperament, and local conditions. Some adopted a policy of gradual territorial reclamation, expelling human and alien populations only from specific worlds.
The Imperium, despite its vast size, often lacked accurate historical knowledge regarding its new adversaries. Fragmentary records, distorted myths, and contradictory field reports prevented the development of a consistent policy. Some Imperial commanders underestimated the Necrons, viewing them as another regional threat. Others exaggerated their capabilities into apocalyptic prophecy. Over time, a clearer understanding emerged. The Necrons represented not a single empire, but a complex network of ancient dynasties whose power varied dramatically from one region to another. Strategically, the Necrons approached these modern conflicts with characteristic detachment. Their objectives were rarely ideological. They sought control of key systems, protection of tomb worlds, and recovery of lost infrastructure. Where possible, they avoided unnecessary entanglements with unpredictable forces such as chaos or major warp disturbances. Their disdain for psychic phenomena, rooted in ancient history, remained unchanged. Many dynasties viewed the warp not as a resource, but as an unstable hazard born from the mistakes of the old ones and later magnified by younger species. At the same time, the internal condition of Necron society continued to shape their interactions with the galaxy. Some overlords attempted to minimize collateral destruction, guided by remnants of cultural memory or by a rational assessment that unnecessary devastation wasted resources. Others operated with complete indifference to the lives of biological species, viewing them as transient and strategically insignificant. Rarely, limited arrangements or ceasefires were established when mutual advantage could be demonstrated. Such agreements were always conditional and temporary. The cumulative effect of these encounters was to reintroduce the Necrons as a major presence in galactic affairs. They were no longer the dominant power of the war in heaven, yet they were far from relics. Their technology, persistence, and strategic patience allowed them to contest territory, even against empires many times their apparent size. For the younger races, the Necrons became a reminder that the galaxy contained layers of history far older than any living culture. For the Necrons themselves, these conflicts represented both necessity and continuity, a renewed assertion of existence in a galaxy that had long since forgotten the origins of their ancient tragedy.
Beneath the territorial campaigns and strategic maneuvering, the Necron civilization continued to wrestle with the lingering consequences of biotransference. Immortality had preserved intellect, but had not protected the subtler dimensions of selfhood. Over the long arc of history, corruption of memory matrices, degradation of personality cores, and the rigid protocols embedded during the Satan era produced a society in which consciousness existed along a fractured spectrum. This internal reality shaped every aspect of Necron existence in the modern age, often more profoundly than external conflict. At the base of the hierarchy stood vast legions of warriors and labor constructs. Many of these entities retained only minimal echo traces of the minds that once guided them as Necrontyr. Their awareness was dominated by directives, routines, and automatic responses. They marched, fought, and maintained infrastructure with unwavering precision, but their perception of self was almost non-existent.
To outside observers, they appeared indistinguishable from fully automated machines, yet within their cores lingered faint and fragmented imprints, like distant reflections of forgotten lives that no longer possessed shape or context. Above them, specialist castes exhibited variable degrees of retained cognition. Cryptechs, administrators, and certain command-level units possessed complex problem-solving capabilities and limited autonomy. Some retained fragments of personality, humor reduced to structural irony, curiosity expressed through clinical investigation, or loyalty grounded in the shadow of memories no longer fully understood. These individuals formed the functional backbone of Necron society, ensuring continuity of knowledge and adaptation to changing circumstances. Yet even they moved through existence with a sense of incompleteness, aware on some level that their thoughts were partial reconstructions rather than seamless consciousness. The nobility represented the apex of preserved identity. Overlords, pharaons, and ruling elites often retained substantial portions of their Necrontyr selves. They remembered dynastic lineages, ancient political struggles, and even fragments of lost emotion. However, these memories were rarely whole. Centuries of maintenance, occasional data corruption, and the essential difference between organic and metallic cognition left gaps, distortions, and inconsistencies. Some nobles experienced these fractures as a quiet melancholy, an awareness that they were separated from their own past by an invisible barrier. Others responded with cold pragmatism, reducing identity to continuity of rule rather than continuity of feeling.
In rare cases, the imperfections of biotransference produced more extreme outcomes. Certain lords awoke to find their minds trapped in repetitive thought cycles, obsessing over narrow objectives or ancient grudges. Others developed rigid ideological fixations, interpreting their fractured memories as prophetic insight or absolute truth. These individuals often presided over dynasties whose behavior appeared unpredictable or erratic to outsiders. Such instability did not always weaken their strategic capability. Immortal beings locked into relentless focus could prove dangerously effective, particularly when their goals aligned with existing power structures. Efforts to address these psychological and cognitive fractures formed an important undercurrent within Necron research. Some cryptechs experimented with memory reconstruction, attempting to reintegrate lost fragments or recover suppressed identity layers. Results were inconsistent. In a few instances, nobles regained deeper awareness and a more coherent sense of self. In others, the process introduced instability, triggering existential disorientation or catastrophic system failure. The fundamental problem remained unchanged. The Necrons had exchanged organic continuity for mechanical permanence. What they gained in durability, they lost in the fluid resilience that once characterized living consciousness. Despite these challenges, Necron society did not dissolve. Hierarchy, tradition, and encoded loyalty provided structural stability. Even fractured minds could fulfill defined roles within this framework. However, the underlying question of identity never fully disappeared. It manifested in subtle policy differences. Some dynasties sought to minimize interaction with biological species, wary of confronting reflections of what they had lost. Others pursued dominance as a means of asserting continued relevance. A small minority engaged in limited study of organic civilizations, not for conquest,
but in search of insight into forms of being that they themselves could no longer experience. This internal complexity distinguished the Necrons from purely artificial intelligences or unthinking machines. They were the remnants of a once living civilization preserved in metallic form, bearing the weight of history without the emotional vocabulary that had once allowed them to process it. The galaxy often perceived them as cold and inhuman, yet within their silent halls, ancient intelligences continued.
In the modern age, the Necrons stand once more among the great powers of the galaxy. Yet their position is profoundly different from the dominance they once exercised during the War in Heaven. Instead of a unified empire under the Silent King, the contemporary Necrons exist as a constellation of dynasties, each with its own priorities, strengths, and historical memories. Some command vast territories, anchored by multiple tomb worlds. Others persist as isolated remnants, awakened from the Great Sleep into a galaxy that can no longer be shaped according to their design. Together, they form a civilization both ancient and renewed, powerful yet internally divided, and defined by the enduring legacy of choices made in a distant era. The defining characteristic of the modern Necrons is strategic patience. Immortality allows them to plan across centuries without haste. Where younger species react to crises with urgency, Necron overlords assess developments within timelines that would be unthinkable to mortal civilizations. This patience does not imply inertia. Fleets mobilize when required. Worlds are reclaimed or defended with relentless precision. Yet each action forms part of a broader, almost geological process of gradual restoration. The Necrons are not driven by expansionist ideology or imperial pride in the conventional sense. They seek stability, continuity, and the safeguarding of dynastic heritage in a galaxy whose unpredictability they neither trust nor fully value. At the same time, the Necrons retain technological advantages that ensure their relevance in any major conflict. Their mastery of inertialess propulsion, phase weaponry, and self-repairing necrodermis continues to confound and challenge rival powers. Imperial forces may win local engagements with numbers, faith, and resilience, but strategic parity remains elusive. Eldar craft worlds operate with centuries of foresight, yet even they regard the Necrons with wary respect, aware that these silent legions descend from the very past that shaped Eldar destiny. Other species, lacking deep historical awareness, encounter the Necrons as an apparently emotionless force of nature, emerging from beneath the ground to reclaim forgotten domains. Despite this strength, the Necrons are no longer omnipotent. The warp has become a dominant feature of galactic life, empowering forces of chaos that the Necrons neither command nor desire. Younger empires continue to expand, innovate, and adapt. Even the most powerful dynasties must navigate a strategic environment far more complex than the one they once sought to dominate. This reality reinforces the pragmatic, carefully calculated approach that defines modern Necron policy. Open conquest is rare unless deemed essential. Coexistence, whether deliberate or incidental, often becomes the default state.
Yet the most significant transformation has occurred not in external affairs, but within the Necrons themselves. Across many dynasties, rulers and cryptechs continue to wrestle with questions left unresolved since the time of Biotransference.
What does it mean to endure without change? What purpose does immortality serve when memory is fractured and emotion muted? These reflections do not always lead to compassion or empathy, but they do shape policy in subtle ways. Some overlords pursue restoration of lost identity as a long-term objective. Others accept their current state as the inevitable endpoint of cosmic evolution. A few see themselves as custodians of history, preserving a continuity that would otherwise vanish beneath the flux of mortal civilizations. In this sense, the Necrons represent both survival and warning. They achieved the dream that haunted their Necrontyr ancestors: freedom from disease, aging, and biological limitation. Yet this victory came at the cost of emotional depth, cultural vitality, and the organic continuity that had once given meaning to existence. Their civilization endures, but endurance alone does not answer the deeper questions that now shape their destiny. The return of the Silent King, in certain accounts, adds another layer to this evolving narrative. His renewed presence suggests the possibility of future unification or reform, though its outcome remains uncertain. Whether the dynasties will ever again speak with a single voice is unknown. What is clear is that the Necrons will remain a defining force in galactic history, ancient, patient, technologically supreme, and still haunted by the echoes of decisions made beneath a dying star. Thus, the complete history of the Necrons forms a closed yet unfinished circle, born from suffering, transformed by cosmic alliances, hardened through unimaginable war, preserved through silence, and reborn into a changed galaxy. They endure as a testament to both the power and the cost of overcoming mortality. Their story is not merely one of conquest or tragedy. It is the chronicle of a civilization that gained eternity only to discover